Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Behr Essentials with me, Dani Behr. Today's very special guest is not only one of my closest, oldest friends who I absolutely love to pieces, but he's the most phenomenal comic, writer, producer, podcaster. He's just an all round, multi talented guy. And more importantly, he's just a great guy. He's just one of those normal people you don't get in LA. Bryan Callen.
Ladies and gentlemen,
Hey, baby.
well, thanks for that intro.
No, I love you. And I just want to start by saying how there's just very few people you meet in your life, and we will get into our long lives and all the different chapters in it. But like some people just stick around for the long haul. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Some people are just there from the beginning through to the end. Some don't last, most don't last. But I just
yeah
love
that,
you
that
for
comes
being
down to
you.
value. It comes down to values. I think. I think at the end of the day, no one I've known as long as I've known you isn't somebody who I share the same value structure with. I think that's what bonds people. It's humor and all that and fun, but at the end of the day, I think it's if it was just humor and fun, you'd stay in touch with the people you used to go clubbing with.
Right.
But at the end of the day, yeah, I think there's something deeper. It's an intimacy. It's like sort of this thing where we're in this together. And
Totally.
by the way, as you get older, when you're my age, like if you're my age and you see your friends that are your age you haven't seen in a long time, like you look at each other like you're in an airport and all the flights have been canceled. You're just like, because you both go, hey, and you're like, I know, right? And you're like, how did we get here? Like how did we get here?
No
I was
words
young.
necessary.
Yeah, like I moved to LA in 1995, and that was roughly 8 months ago. You know?
Exactly. Where does the time go? I know people say when you have kids, time just, my grandfather used to say years become months, months become weeks, weeks become days. And I was like, what is he talking about? And now I get it. Like it's Christmas every 6 months, it feels,
I know.
right? All
I
I'm doing is taking the tree up, taking the tree down. And there's a little bit of
well,
time in
hopefully
between.
you realize that you're not missing anything. The FOMO is this thing that we all have, but I think it's really easy to compare yourself to other people, right? So you have friends that are uber successful, and if you start comparing yourself to that, you're in trouble. But that's a form of missing out. You feel like you're missing out on something, or you feel like you should be somewhere that you're not. And I think you're supposed
We
to
all
let
do,
go of
actually.
all of that because you're not anywhere other than where you're supposed to be,
It's
probably.
very wise, profound words here. Do me a favor,
Yeah.
just raise your computer down a bit you just look like a chopped off head. Sorry,
Watch.
Paris. Paris, marker that. Just move it down so we don't just see your head. Maybe a little bit of chest. There we go.
How's that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just move you either to your left or move the computer to the right so you're in the middle.
Is that good?
No, but now you're two the other way. Go
Oh,
the other way a bit.
okay. Hold on.
Go left. Yeah, that's good. And is it on can you raise it a little bit? Am I
Yeah.
asking just because
No.
we're looking up the nostrils?
I know it's so weird. It's this damn computer. Hold on. It's this.
Yeah. We just
Hold
need
on.
to see not just a head, a neck and maybe a couple of shoulders. There we
How's
go.
that?
Yeah, and
Better.
you have great chest and shoulders, dude. So,
I have a great body. I have the best body in comedy. Hold on. I won it again this year.
is that an actual award?
No, but it should
Okay.
be.
Okay, perfect. All right, let's just go from here. First question out the bag I want to ask you, Bri, is if you could travel back in time and meet your younger self, like what advice would you give young Bryan? And I've met young Bryan.
I would say, Brian, be ruthless. Ruthless about the people you bring around you and into your life. And use the word no way more than you use the word yes. I think that is what I would say.
Hmm.
Um, but then that might be, yeah, I think, well, yes, yes.
And is
You have
that
to be ruthless about the people you choose to bring into your circle, into your inner circle. You have to be very, very discriminatory. You have to be ruthless, and that's it.
but sometimes when you're young, you feel like you are being discriminatory and people present themselves in a way which seems authentic and genuine and wonderful and lovely, right? And they change over time too. So yes, be ruthless, but at the same time, you have to go with your gut to a point and you can't be so ruthless where you become cynical and everybody's the
Well,
enemy, right?
yeah, that's why
What's
when
the
I
fine
said
line?
that, just when I just said that, I kind of hesitated because I'm not so sure I believe what I'm saying. You know, I would have made different mistakes. And I think there's a lot to be said about the fact that I always see the best in people. And I always expect people to, I guess, fulfill the outline I have created for them. And maybe that's on me, and maybe it's just fine. You know,
Do you think
yeah.
that when
I,
you set
I
those
was always optimistic.
expectations,
I'm a very optimistic person.
do you think when you set those kind of expectations, one will always be disappointed because people never really act or behave or follow through in the same way that you may towards them? Or have
I
some
don't know.
people surpassed
I'm
that?
afraid. I'm afraid. You know what I'm afraid of when I answer that question. When somebody asks me that question, I'm afraid that the truth is, even if I went back and I could talk to myself, I'd say something like invest in Bitcoin probably, and then sell. 3 years ago or whatever it would be. But I could give myself all kinds of advice and probably have a lot less fun and maybe have more money in the bank. But I, I I don't know that I would have not made the same mistakes. I don't know if my set point is stronger than my will
Hmm.
and my reason and my attention to detail. I think probably I'd be right here, and I like who I am now. But it took a long time. It took a long time and many mistakes to get to a point where, at this stage in my life, I tell the truth across the board all the time about everything. And I used to not do that as much to save people's feelings, or, I was always worried about people and I wanted them to like me. And I was always afraid of being totally honest about how I felt about something. And that's ridiculous. And I never do that anymore because you can't lie about anything, man. You never, I guess what I'd say is this, Bryan, you get away with nothing in life. You'll get away with nothing. You can lie to yourself as much as you want. Lying to other people is sometimes you're saving their feelings. Okay, you can be tactful, but you can't lie to yourself. And if you lie to yourself, you just never get away with it. There's no one who ever has gotten away in their life with lying to themselves ever once, even one time, for a second.
Because you get caught out. You get caught out in the end,
Your
right?
body, the piper must be paid. The laws of the universe are the laws of the universe. But when you're young, you think that you're one of God's favorites. You just do. Nothing bad's gonna happen. I'm one of God's favorites, and I'm going to behave. I'm Peter Pan. I don't want to grow up. I don't, because I don't feel like it. I want to have fun. I want all the attention. And yeah,
You mentioned how you made a lot of mistakes along the way. In contrast to that, what do you think the most important decision you've ever made, and what did you learn from it?
the most important decision I ever made was to say you can be an artist. You can make your living off your imagination. You can be an actor. You can be a comic. I mean, that's an outrageous thing to say to yourself. It's an outrageous thing to even try to do. And there's something about terror and desperation that will a lot of times bear fruit. I was reading Joseph Campbell. He said, follow your bliss. And then I think it was Susan Sontag. She was dying of cancer, and they said, what would you do differently? And she said, I would do nothing. I wouldn't do anything because it made sense. I wouldn't do what was sensible.
Hmm.
It's kind of a cool idea, right?
Yeah,
Live
I like that.
dangerously and leave a good looking corpse to turn your life into a circus. So I don't know. I say a lot of these things in the air, but I certainly think that gambling on myself and saying I'm going to be a stand-up comic. I mean, what an incredible job.
Would you
What?
say that's the biggest risk you've taken in life so far as well? Would you say
Yeah,
that
yeah, yeah,
is the
100%.
biggest risk?
Yeah. I mean, just being an actor and saying I can do this, and then, I mean, it's just impossible.
Well, let's take it back a few years. Let's go back to your child. Like, what? How was your childhood? If you had to summarize it,
Chaos,
okay, it's a good
full
word.
of love, but chaotic because I was moved constantly. I never lived anywhere for more than a year and a half of my life until it was. I mean, really, I never put anything on a wall because I was never in one space for more than a year and a half until I was 30, 32.
And why was that?
Because my father was we were moved to one country after another, right? So Philippines, India, Pakistan, Greece, Saudi Arabia, Lebanon, boarding school, summer camp as a kid because everybody, my parents were gone. They were in another country or another continent. So then college, so just so yeah, and I have relived that trauma on my own terms ever since. So the idea of putting your feet on the ground and saying this is it has always been
Hmm.
a very precarious thing for me.
I was going to say, has that brought sort of a feeling of everything is temporary for you? Like, is home never really home? Did you always feel like there's always change on the horizon? Do you like crave that variety of life, like that change?
Yeah, there are two things that I have come to realize are the overwhelming driving forces and maybe more importantly obstacles of my life. One is that the fact that my life was I've been a nomad. So the minute I'm anywhere, if you want to make me panic, give me everything, and then give me a place and a beautiful view and say this is your life forever. I'll find a way to torch the whole thing. I mean, I'll find a way to burn the house down somehow. Don't give me everything. I'm overcoming that to an extent. But the second thing, the second major force in my life, whether it's an obstacle or a driving force, and it's both, is the fact that I grew up in very, very poor countries as a rich white American. And I saw poverty on the level that nobody in this country has ever seen it. You don't know poverty until you've been in India and Pakistan in the 70s, in Yemen in the 70s. You don't know what when you go to Africa in the early 80s and you see somebody who's dead on the street and nobody's paying attention. I saw leprosy in its advanced stages on people, and I saw the humiliation. I saw children my age from an air conditioned van as they were begging for food. And I think as a kid, when you realize that the math fell in your favor for no reason, I just got lucky and I did nothing to deserve it. It's a little bit difficult to have.
Hmm.
It's a little bit difficult to be greedy. It's a little bit difficult to think that you deserve anything.
So does that now translate into your adult life?
Yeah,
And you always feel undeserved, or
yeah.
why me?
That's why I have such a major problem with self promotion. I have such a hard time saying, come to my show. I have such a hard time saying, hey, watch my special and calling people and say, let me promote my special on your podcast or any of that stuff. I just have a really hard time. And that's not an admirable quality. It's
Well,
just,
it's different back then as well. Like back in the day, there was no self-promotion, there was no self-advocacy, not like today with social media. Back then you had to have an entourage of people that worked for you, publicists, that a communication, you had to pay people to do this job for you, agents, managers, people represented you because it is hard. Well, I think for our generation that aren't used to it, to promote yourself, to represent yourself, to negotiate for yourself. Nowadays, they are high flying and so confident. Kids nowadays are like me, hey, like no qualms whatsoever, right?
no,
I
because you
think
could,
it's generational
yeah, back
too.
then you could be cool. You could be like Johnny Depp could just be an aloof, super
Mhm,
cool actor. And he had a whole
mhm,
machine that would kind of get
mhm.
him out there. And he could go on Letterman and say 3 words. And people are like, oh my God.
Well, there was a mystery, there was an allure because you didn't see them all the time. So when you did see them on a late night show or a guest here or there, it was exclusive. It was special.
Yeah,
Do you
Johnny Depp is
feel
the only guy who still gets away with that.
yeah,
He won that
interesting.
trial by just literally being totally still
And
and
Johnny
saying
Behr.
1 word at a time. I mean, that's when if you have any doubts about why that guy's a movie star and a great actor, that dude was able to seduce an entire world by just literally fumbling over words, not moving, just mumbling into the mic. Like, God. Ah!
So going back to your childhood and all these different places you lived and all the different extreme lifestyles that you've witnessed and experienced, was there any one defining moment in your childhood that changed you, or was one big lesson, or was there just one moment in time that was really stuck out,
Um,
good, bad, or ugly?
yeah, I mean, I think there are these turning points in your life. Um, I think that because I grew up, my father was always traveling, so I grew up. Probably, I never felt. I certainly never felt safe as a child. It's not anybody's fault. It's not my parents' fault or anybody's fault. But I do think that living in a being a stranger in a strange land, and I remember being in the war in Lebanon, and I we were there for 6 months. I remember having to sleep on the floor. I remember seeing the machine guns. And I was very acutely aware that there were bad men in the world, and I was out of control. I couldn't protect my mother, for example, or my sister. I remember that feeling, that impotent feeling as a boy, realizing that there were bad men and I was at their whim. But more importantly, that my mother and my sister were also their victims, and I couldn't protect them. I've always had a very deep, and it might be a male instinct to protect. I also had an example of a provider protector in my father. But I think the war in Lebanon was a seminal event for me, and
Yes.
and uh, and then going back to Lebanon in '81 and seeing what the country had become, seeing what war does to a country that used to be, the Paris of the Middle East. It was Phoenician, and I didn't recognize it. And I think, and I remember they shot a missile over our head. I was on the beach. The noise was so loud that we all fell down on the ground. The
Wow.
noise was so loud. So those moments are very significant. Um, but then taking certain actions, sort of deciding I wanted to be something, even though I did. See, anybody who's listening who's young, if you think it's not for you, but you're desperate to do it. Even if even it sounds like an outrageous thing to try, right? So I just wanted to be. I will never really be happy because I'm not 6'4" and 230 pounds of muscle. I'll never be happy because I'm not playing in the NFL. But I did wrestle, and I remember deciding to be a wrestler, or deciding to get into judo, or decide, these things that I just. But at least I wasn't the last guy picked on the team, so I don't know.
Did you
But there
did
are a
you
lot.
decide to do those things because it was manly, because that was your way of being able to protect, did those elements
Yeah,
come into
yeah,
your
yeah, yeah.
system?
Yeah, so one of the most seminal moments in my life was, in fact, when I had an acting teacher who said to me, "You have one idea of masculinity, young man, and you're not that guy. You're not
Oh,
some tough
boy.
Navy SEAL. You're not some guy who is. You're not this big, whatever you are. You're not a Spartan. In fact, you're a clown, but it's a beautiful thing. Your masculinity is in your humor. Your masculinity is in your ability to be to understand what people are proud of and what they're ashamed of. And that's why people like you, because you always accentuate what they're proud of and you protect them from what they're ashamed of. And I'm very good at that. I am the best in the world at that. I'm the
Yeah.
best there's no one better than Bryan Callen. Somebody's got to be the best. But in terms of seeing somebody walk across the street, I know what they're proud of and I know what they're ashamed of. It was
And
it was my survival mechanism. I learned how to read people very, very quickly.
it's funny, funny you mentioned that because a lot of your stand-up is the Navy SEAL guy and the macho and the machismo and you
Yes.
bring a lot of those characters into your stand-up,
Well,
and
because
you have done for ever since you've been doing stand-up.
a man's biggest fear is that he's a coward, and his biggest aspiration is to be a hero. And I've always been fascinated with that dichotomy because I think it's a false one. And I think that of course, as you get older, you let go of all this stuff. But emotionally, that was such a driving factor. The idea that I think again, the most seminal moment was the guy was like, "You're emotional, dude. You're really sensitive, and you're really funny, and you're. I'm way more of a cat than I am a dog. I'm
That's funny.
finicky. I'm sensitive
Yeah,
to
you are.
to
You
temper.
are sensitive,
I
finicky.
don't like itchy clothing. I'm not the guy who eats a bowl of gruel and charges. No, I'm not that guy. I'd be like, oh guys, I'm gonna be on the wall, but if you have a sniper rifle, so yeah. So those are the things you start to learn about yourself and embrace and use as a strength.
And what's interesting is knowing your father not super well, but spending enough time with him. Tell us a bit about your father, because your father is that kind of
He's
hero. big,
He's
burly, huge guy. Like everything you're talking about, that's your dad. Tell us a bit about your dad.
he's the Marine. He's that giant man who wakes up and says today's a good day to die. He is to his core a big Irish German Midwest farm boy who who is not sensitive to the cold. He's not sensitive to what he eats. He's just he's the guy who you can strap a pack to, and he's gonna hoof it. And he's 6'4", 200 and probably naturally 230 pounds, just a big guy, and with a head that could house a family of four. When he dies, they should hollow his head out, and they could move some refugees in there, and it'd be very, very ample space for them. They'd have room for a TV and a ping pong table. So that was my archetype, my masculine archetype. I grew up with that example, and I wasn't that guy, man.
So do
I
you
was
think
like,
a lot of your comedy is to impress your dad still? Do you think you became the class clown, the joker, the comedian because you had to fit in a new place every year? You had to have something that made everybody like you at the new school, the new
yes,
place?
of
Was
course.
it more of a, yeah,
But
survival
comedy was
tactic?
survival. Comedy was survival. You can't you take me and you throw me into a whole new. It was literally a different country, a different continent, a different school, everything. And they'd be like, go, here he is in the middle of the school year, Bryan Callen, and I'd be like, well, time to make some friends, motherfuckers. Let me see how I can make you laugh, yeehaw. And I learned again how to make friends. I'd make you laugh, and I would find out what you were proud of, what you were ashamed of, and I could see it right away. And
So do you think being your dad, going back to your dad again, being this huge guy, this archetype of hero, solid macho machismo, and then you see yourself who's not 6'4", not that you don't have your own redeeming features, darling, but
yes, yes.
you're not physically the same look as your father.
5'11", 5'11", everybody.
5'11's fine. 5'11's good. Do you feel like the difference between you both physically was already funny in itself, and there was just a springboard for you to just jump off, and that's why you used a lot of that in the comedy? Or was
Well,
it more of
yeah,
your
yes, I think that I was always ashamed of what I perceived as my own fragility. That's shaming to a boy. When you grow up with one metric for what masculinity and strength is, and no one ever told me that there are other strengths. It's my joke is my dad was built for war and I'm built for dance, but I would have been a hell of a fucking dancer. I was a pretty good wrestler, but I would have been a hell of a dancer.
hell
So
of a run?
but I just didn't have the culture to support that, and that's okay. But
Tell,
yeah,
tell, tell us about your mom.
my mother can find death anywhere. My mother can find death in a bowl of soup. Okay, careful, there might be poison. Sometimes the arsenic leaks from a can. I mean, she can think of 1,000 things. She warned me about a moose. I was driving and she goes, "Be careful, there's a moose in this area. You won't have time to brake. It'll crush us under its weight." I was like, "You're warning me about a moose?" Because I'm going 40 miles an hour. You want me to slow down at 35? No, I'm not doing it. I sped up to 50. So that's my mother. My mother can ruin everything. You go to the beach, she's like, "Beware of the undertow. The jealousy will drag you somewhere dark and cruel." Like, why are you speaking like a blind oracle? And why am I in an Emily Bronte novel? You're from Brooklyn, for Christ's sake. I can't.
That's the Italian guilt, the
Oh,
Italian neurosis kicking in.
oh,
Well,
neurosis.
Sicilian, which is even
My
more
mother,
accentuated than
yeah,
Italian.
my mother's neurosis certainly ruined a lot of a good time. She was just terrified I'd get kidnapped, poisoned, fall off a ledge, hit by a car, or develop or catch tetanus or some medieval fucking disease. And so she really knew how to put a damper on the.
But I mean, but they took a lot of risks taking you and your sister around the world to these third
Yeah,
world countries that are rife of disease and horror stories and aren't particularly safe places. So as much as it's a bit of a contradiction, here she is, this paranoid neurosis, guilt-ridden Sicilian tiny little woman. But then she was quite adventurous, right? She
she
had
really
to have
she
some.
was. She's a very wise woman. She's very. My mother speaks all different languages. When we would go to a country, she would immerse herself in the culture. She would learn the language, and she would feed us that food. I did not grow up on American food. And I grew up. My mother is her sense of humanity and her wisdom is deep. She has deep emotional intelligence, and she always instilled in me that these people, these Indian people, these Pakistani people, these Saudi Arabian people, these Lebanese people, these African people, whoever they were exactly like me and her. They bled the same way, they laughed at the same things, they cried at the same things, and that people overall were always mostly good, and all you have to do is give them a chance to show you that. And she was my biggest influence in that sense. My father, on the other hand, could live in the Arab world for 16 years and not learn a word of Arabic, not a word of Arabic. So
Complete opposites.
yeah, just that was Wisconsin versus New York Italian. So yeah.
Tell me about your sister? Were you close? What's the age gap? How was your relationship growing up in all these different places? And then how has it evolved?
My sister is so you know how some people are very sentimental and emotional, you know, and my sister, like if you had problems or you wanted some sentiment, and you had the choice between my sister and a cup of coffee, it wouldn't make a difference. You could just talk to the cup of coffee and you'd get the same amount of empathy and understanding. My sister is,
She's your father's daughter, would you say? And
oh
you're your
yeah,
mother's
she's a
son?
no nonsense, no nonsense. Love. My sister was my first audience. My sister was my first audience. My sister was probably the first person that taught me that I was funny, and she was very loyal to me, but and has always been so. So but she's a tough, no nonsense. You and her remind me of each other actually. You and my sister are very similar in that you're not sentimental, you're not emotionally unstable. You're about the most grounded person. You and my sister. In fact, I'm thinking of this now, and I'm realizing you and my sister are probably the most grounded women, and my wife actually are the most grounded women I've ever met in my life. Just know exactly who they are. No nonsense, no frills. And by the way, if you can get away with doing it for $5 versus 500, do it for $5. Okay, you're not fancy. If I gave you $1 billion, I gave my sister $1 billion. I gave Dani $1 billion. My wife's name is Dani. I you know I, they would still be looking for a deal. They'd still be looking for. They'd be like, "What? How much?
100%.
Are you out of your mind?" They'd
100%.
go around the corner, and that I've always appreciated. That's practical to the core. Practical to the
True.
core.
So true.
Yeah, and I'm
I love
not.
it.
And
And
I'm
you're not.
not.
You're not.
I would have gotten suckered out of every dime I've ever had. I'd be like, seems like a nice guy. My sister was like, don't trust that guy, okay? Scumbag. I'd be like, what? What are you
I
talking
love
about?
it.
So yeah.
I love it. I've had an interesting Christmas with the Callens, so
Oh yeah.
I
Oh yeah.
I can relate.
No, no.
Moving on, when was the moment that what age were you? What was that moment when you went, I'm gonna be an actor, I'm gonna be a comic? I know that was a hard decision, not for you to make, but for you to tell your father, especially, who had other ideas for you.
Yeah. Well, I was in college and I decided to take some acting classes, and I was okay. You know, I wasn't anything special. Um, and I mean, the one thing I learned about acting was it's so much harder than people think. And so I was quickly realized that boy, this is not easy, and also this is not practical. So I quit, and and then I decided I was going to be really practical. I don't know. I interviewed at the CIA. I did all kinds of weird stuff. And then I was working at a bank, and I was like, "Oh, I think I'm going to die if I do this. I'm going to die." Okay, and I knew I always wanted to be an actor. It's that little voice clearing his throat in the other room, you know. And finally, I just said, "Okay." I woke up from a nap. I said, "I have to be an actor. I have to try. That's all I want to do." Because I was obsessed with De Niro. I saw Raging Bull. I saw Raging Bull, and I said, whatever that guy's doing, I want to be close to it. It had such a deep and profound effect on me. And to this day, I don't know why. But I was so moved by some movies and so moved by some performances. And they were
Mm,
male performances. They were men who somehow, I don't know, spoke to me. I still have never been able to figure out why. why it was that De Niro's and Scorsese's New York experience. Now, part of it is my mother was from that part of the world, Bensonhurst, Brooklyn, but that wasn't it. There was just there was something passionate and incredible about those movies, that culture, that Italian American culture, but also how De Niro and Scorsese were able to capture it. And then I saw
Mm.
The Deer Hunter, and I saw De Niro and Walken in that, and I've never been the same ever since. That Russian roulette scene, I've never been the same. I just couldn't believe what it did to me
Mm.
physically. I had to try to do something like that. And of course, by the way, the great news is I would go there, and I decided I was going to try to be a brooding actor like Walken and De Niro, and I'm not. I'm a jackass. Okay, and I can't hold my concentration for that long. And it was Patty Jenkins, the great director, who said, "Hey, stop trying to be De Niro and Pacino and Walken. You ain't. You are a funny jackass. Be that guy." And that's when stand up started. So
Well, Patty was, can we say, was one of your earlier
yeah,
girlfriends?
for 9 years.
That's yeah. That's when I first met you, when you
That's right.
just started dating
Yeah,
Patty.
yeah, yeah.
We're going way back now, and
Way
wow,
back.
what a career she's had. And
Yeah.
I mean, do you find all these different people, they've almost, pushed you along? I was gonna, I don't want to ask the cheesy question. What's your definition of success, and how has it evolved over time? But would you put it down to the different people that have come in and out of your life, or what is your definition of success? Let's just start with
I don't
that.
know. That's a good question. I think there's this quote by the philosopher Schiller who said, "Man is never more himself than when at play," and
Mm.
play being that thing you would do for its own sake, the thing you do if you didn't get paid. And I think that when you can figure out a way to do that and get paid for it, when you can make your living that way, that would be success to me. That's success.
How is your success evolved over time? Let's talk about your first gig. What was your first job?
First big job was
How
Mad
old
TV.
were you?
Mad TV.
Mad TV. And how did that happen? Did you audition? Were you just asked to come in? Tell us
Five
through that process.
auditions. I mean, I was in New York. I sent a tape in. I sent another tape in. They had me come. I then auditioned for the producers, and they gave me notes, and then I went in for it was a long audition. I had to come in with 5 characters and do a scene and as a different character, and then do a regular scene, and then do an improv. I mean, it was extensive, and I
Wow.
I, I got that job because I had to. I got that
Mhm.
job because again, I've never been more desperate to get a job. Never, and I did.
Wow. Well, as you know, I've launched my mentorship and my consulting program for all young students who are looking to get into our business in some capacity. And so, one of the things I like to ask all the guests are, what advice would you give you starting out? Like, if you just graduated from college or in college, what are the top 3 things you would advise a young student or a young professional wanting to be in the business do, avoid? Just would love to get
Well.
your.
So nowadays I can tell you what people think, and I'm going to tell you why they're wrong. There's this idea that, and you can get away with it for a while, that if you're really good at social media and really good at spectacle, whatever, it's punking people on the street or whatever, that you can become famous, and you can, to an extent, you can even make money that way. If you think that's going to last, I'll see you in 5 years. I'll see you in 5 years when you're not, when that isn't the case. Um, if you want to be a filmmaker, if you want to be a writer, if you want to be an actor, I don't care how the business changes. You better study formally. You better learn from people that do it. There are very few great writers in Hollywood. If you want to write a screenplay, it ain't enough to watch movies. It's not enough to think you're talented and intelligent, and it's not enough to read books. You have to study it the way you would study architecture or surgery. You have to study it the way you'd study anything. The way you go to school to be a special forces soldier. You won't know the difference between you and a Navy SEAL or a Delta Force guy or a Green Beret until you go through that long program. And I don't think screenwriting is any different. And frankly, I don't think acting is that different. I certainly don't think directing is that different. So when it comes to the business of self-expression, if you want to be original in that self-expression, you have to understand and learn the form. You have to learn. You have to learn how the greats did it and do it. And if you don't, you'll be spinning your wheels. So that's my advice. Technique and substance first. Worry about promotion second. That's what I would say. You know.
Of all the different skill sets you have and the different, jobs you've been booked for, whether it's as a comic, as an actor, as a writer, what's your favorite and why? And what do you think of each of those you're best at?
I'm the best at stand up, and I think I'm the best at stand up because I hold the bar so high for myself, and I don't look at anybody else. I don't look up to any other comic. I like a lot of comics, but I don't look up to anybody. I look up to authors and things, but not comics. And so for me, I trust that when I laugh at something or when something surprises me or excites me, it's going to excite the audience. That's my that's what you come to as you start to find your voice that way when you trust that you are enough, that your expression is unique, and that's a journey. Don't expect to have that right away.
Do you still get the jitters? Do you still get the nerves when before you go into stand up, or is it just second nature now? It's like
Yeah,
just
I
riding the
don't get
bike.
even a little bit nervous, and that's
That means you're good.
well. It also means yeah, it's also not good. I wish I could get a little nervous sometimes. Yeah.
If you could learn a new skill or a talent overnight, like that, what would it be and why?
Well, I'd love to be able to play the piano. I think, but yeah, I think piano. I think piano. But it's all the same when you. It depends. Mastery is all the same. I don't.
Mhm.
I think that the understanding you get from getting very good at one thing is the understanding you get from getting very good at anything. I think that there's a common understanding. So life for most people is a mystery. It's like you see a piano player or a great dancer, or a great jujitsu guy or whatever, and you're like, God, how do they do that? Or you see a gymnast, and then what happens is you realize that there is a system to it. There is a methodology to it. There is a magic to it. Magic tricks surprise you. If I were to show you how, if somebody like David Blaine were to show you how he does that magic trick, you'd be like, oh man, you don't want to see the machinations behind the curtain. But there's something about anything you choose to do, to be a great boxer, to be a great jiu-jitsu practitioner, to be a great pianist. I think that the learning blocks are very similar. The fundamentals, and then there becomes the responsibility of improvisation of coming up with your own techniques. Once you really understand the fundamentals, then you get whatever it might be. So I don't think that's why when you get really good at something, you can have a conversation with other people that are really good at what they do, and maybe that's why people like Federer will be friends with people like you know Kobe Bryant or someone because they all speak the same language, right? You know what I'd like to
Interesting.
be really
Yeah.
good at? I know this is going to sound crazy because I'm reading a book about it. Math. I know that's weird, but math, theoretical math is a hidden world from all of us. It's a language spoken by very few, but it cuts right through the Tower of Babel. It's a universal language, and it's truth, and it exists whether you and I are here or not. And when you see these great mathematicians that deal on a level that's like the great physicists, it's like what in the world are you talking about? But they understand it, and we don't. So I wonder.
This comes down to, and just knowing you as well as I do, the boyish, the boy still inside you that just loves and is so enamored and um I would say you're still impressed with people who are so damn good at what they do, who are at the top of their
Yeah,
game, the goats, the true geniuses, whether they're mathematicians or world champion chess player or the Kobe Bryant. Like you are still so impressed with people who are so damn good at what they do. And you've always been impressed, which
yeah,
even with your success, people get a bit jaded, a bit more cynical, and yeah, they're cool. And don't you find that? But you still kept that that boyishness about you, which
Well,
is unusual.
yeah. Well, so I have a theory. I might be wrong. Just because you're great at something doesn't mean you're a great person, right? You can be
Right.
a real shithead because typically it requires a deep self-centered focus. But I do think I'm going to say this, and I'm sure people would disagree, but I'm going to say it anyway. I think to be really great at something, you have to be telling the truth across the board. I don't think you can have loose unless you're some people are sociopaths, but for the most part, I don't think you can have loose ends. So when you see people that are really good, they're ruthless. Like Rafael Nadal he's not going to try to protect your feelings. There's no
Yeah.
time.
And he's not apologizing. There's no apologies.
There's just this. And then he's got his food, then he's got a way he trains. It's total dedication. It's a monk-like dedication. That's not a
Mm.
fun person to be around. It's not somebody you want to marry. But I think that they touch worlds and air that most of us don't.
I think it's the caliber of talent combined with the dedication and the discipline that's impressive,
Yeah,
right?
100%.
The discipline is just so
But I
impressive.
hate the word discipline. See, I think it exists, but I think something has to come before discipline, and that's inspiration and the imagination. So you have to imagine who you could be, and that vision has to be very strong in your mind.
Mm.
That there is you, and then the great you, the maximum potential you, and that people who can hold that image in their mind and stay inspired, discipline comes naturally. Discipline sounds punitive to me, and I don't think discipline is sustainable. I think you have to truly ask yourself what you want. What do you want? What are you willing to take responsibility for? And careful, because it comes with a
Do
big
you
price.
do you feel there is a point as well where you need to look at the mirror and be honest with yourself and like, yeah, I'm not very good at that, or I'm good at that, but I'm not that great at it where I should keep pursuing this as a career? Is there a time in an artist's life where you have to be real?
I mean, look, I've always said the acting teachers in Los Angeles, the one word they should use way more often and maybe all the time is quit. It's not for
Exactly.
you, young man or young lady. Yank.
How long how long should you give it? I guess
Well,
that's
the
an honest
problem is, the darkest hour is always before the dawn, right? So,
right,
how long should you give it? Die trying. Die trying.
right.
That's my answer.
I like that.
Die trying. Don't protect
Let I
yourself.
want I want to go back to Mad TV. So when did you find out? Sorry, I sort of pivoted off for a second. How long did they take to get back to you? Because sometimes that is the most excruciating time
Yeah,
when you've gone through this incredible audition
about
process.
3 days in my case.
Three
Yeah,
days. That's pretty good.
yeah.
That's
I
pretty
was in.
good.
I was in LA.
And
They made me stay in LA. There was all kinds of issues. I can't. My contract, all that. I was like, I'm taking this job. I don't care.
so, how did that feel? That was your first booked gig, essentially, outside of
Yeah, it
stand
was
up, right? That
incredible. It
where
was
you
the
were.
it was the it was the one of the greatest moments of my life. It was one of the greatest, incredible moments of my life. I couldn't believe. Back then, the TV was. Back then, there were 5 channels, man. Back then, Fox was
It was
as
hard to
big.
book it.
Fox was
Yeah.
Fox. People don't realize what that was back then. That was like, back then, getting on TV where people could see me every Friday night. What? At 10 o'clock or whatever that late night show was like the biggest thing in the world. Everybody saw it. So when you did a show like that, 20 million, 30 million, 20 million people would watch. And if I did a TV show where 13.5 million people were watching, and they canceled us. It wasn't enough. They canceled the
Hold on,
show.
Brian. Wait, hold on. Let's put a marker there. I'm recording a podcast, honey. Got to be really extra quiet. Okay, just go in the other room. Sorry, Zane just
It's
walked in my
okay.
door.
I mean, Tucker
Okay.
Carlson on a good night gets 3 million viewers, and that's a huge show. Back then, man, 13 million
Was
wasn't
20.
enough.
Yeah.
People don't.
Yeah.
So to get that TV show and to prove to myself that I would at least I wasn't a lifelong amateur. At least I'd made it once. At least I'd done something once. It was, I don't know. I couldn't get off the bed. I remember I just lay there staring at the ceiling for hours.
I love that.
Yeah,
And how long was that run? How long were you doing
years.
Mad for? 2 years. And then take us through the career after that.
Then I
What
went
happened
back to
after that?
LA. I mean, back to New York and did a show there. Then I came back, and then for years I was doing like I would get a deal. I always made money because I would get a deal with a network. I would get like and I would just do parts on whoever took me. I'd do it.
Like a development deal with a
Yeah, and then I
network.
would get bit parts, or I'd get a guest starring role here or there, and
Drop some of the guest starring roles you did, like the fun ones. Obviously, Sex and the City, everybody
Entourage,
remembers.
Sex in the
Entourage.
City, Californication, NCIS, SVU, um, West Wing, all the big shows.
What was the most funnest set to be on?
I loved Sex in the City. I was there for.
How was just
They're
Sarah
all
and the
great.
whole
They're
cast?
all just great. They're all great.
That scene was such a classic scene, though. I mean, that's television history. What that scene?
Some of that.
Just just go through it. Just describe that scene for our listeners who maybe haven't
Yeah,
seen it.
so I played the Jackrabbit. I played Howie Hornstein, and Carrie, Sarah Jessica Parker. We go on a date, and then we have sex, and it's Jackrabbit sex. I'm literally like, we didn't know how to shoot it, so I said, look, just she was very prudish. She's very like, oh, and they wanted me. The very gay costume designer gave me basically a peanut and a rubber band. Said, you're going to put this on your. This is all you're going to wear. And I go, I don't mind. I don't care about being naked, but talk to Sarah, because I can tell you right now. She was like, no. And I go, I'll just wear. Don't worry, I'll wear sweats, and we'll.
Was the Jack Rabbit written in
Yes.
before you
Yes.
came? They cast you
Yes,
as the Jack Rabbit,
yes,
or
but I
you?
I ended up choreographing, and I said, just get her under me. She's small, and I'll shake her like a rag doll, and we'll just, I'll just, pound, 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 and that's how we shot it. And I was biting my tongue, so disgusting, but it was so much fun because I really got a chance to act, and I really got a chance to, and I was so ready for it. And I got that part because I sent a tape, and I think I'm the only person. I think I'm the only person, or at least up to that point, who ever got a job off a tape. I sent a tape in, and
Wow.
yeah. So that was.
And maybe the only person who got a job Jack Rabbiting Sarah
Well,
Jessica
that's for sure.
Parker.
And I kept pretending I was an Israeli porn star the whole time and making her laugh. I was like, camera, get my balls. I want to make very nice ish like that. And she was dying. Yeah. So it's really fun.
And that scene was on in the pivotal, like the seminal success of that
I still
show,
get
which was the
recognized
number
from it.
one show. Yeah,
And I
yeah,
still get recognized. It's been like,
yeah.
I don't know how many years.
Because fans of that show, myself being one, you watched that show religiously. That came out every whatever night of the week it was. You got your girls, you had a whole tea party about it, and you sat and you waited for that episode to come on. And it was just the best thing. No one had ever seen anything like that on TV, and it was just
That's
brilliant.
right.
And you all related to the girls one way or
That's
another.
right.
So it was
Yeah,
brilliant.
that's right. That was an amazing sort of. It was just amazing. It was an amazing situation. It was all amazing. So I loved it.
Did you get a lot of jobs off the back of that just purely because of how many
No,
eyes were on
not
that show?
really. I mean, yeah, you get interest, but it never ends. The
Did you
hustle.
get any porn? Did you get any porn
I
offers
I
off of the back?
wish. I wish. The hustle never ends, though. It never ends. You
Yeah,
never. You
never ends.
never. The hustle never ends.
So after that, you do all these great roles, guest roles, and all these big hit shows. What would you say was the next big thing after that for you?
Hangover. You know.
And how did that
I will
happen?
say actually, after Sex and the City, I never stopped working. I was always working. I was always doing something. Whether it was Seventh Heaven, or I was always on a show, Fat Actress, or the Goldbergs, and Schooled. So I never stopped working. I was always working. So actually, I shouldn't be so cynical. You know what the truth is? You want to know the real truth? I never
Hmm.
liked acting.
Really?
I hated.
Too much waiting around for
Yes.
you, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
too much waiting.
Yes.
Well, that's a lot of people don't know this. So when you get called to set, typically it's the situation of hurry up and
Oh,
wait. So you hurry up, get into set 4 in the morning, 5 and whatever your call time is, and you get there and it's this big urgency. Make sure they're on time, and everyone's rushing to make sure you've arrived and put you in your trailer or your room, and then you just wait
and
and you
you
wait,
wait.
and
If
it's
you want to be a
8 o'clock,
movie
9
star, you
o'clock.
wake up. You're going to be waking up at 4 in the morning.
You wake up at 4 in the morning and then you wait till you shoot around maybe 3, 4 p.m. You wait for a good 10 or 12 hours before
A lot
anything
of
happens. By that point, you're
yeah, a
exhausted.
lot of times
I
that's right.
mean, I needed a nap.
That's right. That's
Yeah.
right.
I'm too impatient for it as well, especially with film. I mean, theater is different because it's
Film, you
live,
shoot one
but
page a day.
film, that's why I like hosting because it's live, and all my shows were live TV, and there was no option for a second take or a pre-record. It was
I,
like
I
you better get it right the
yeah, I
first
spent
time.
5 days on the set of The Joker because I got cut out of the movie. There's a little. In a very small part of it, but um, watching Joaquin Phoenix just sit there in that. We shot it in an old factory where they make rugs, but it was long since closed. And we're in the north of Manhattan, and we're shooting these scenes, and I'm watching this guy, this Joaquin Phoenix. Just he'd lost all this weight. He's smoking cigarettes and living on one apple a day, and just living in this weird world where he was just like this crazy incel. And I just could never do that. I could never do what a guy like that does. If that's what it takes to win an Oscar, I ain't never winning an Oscar. I can promise you that. I mean, that's just crazy shit. So
Yeah. So Hangover, how did that happen? How
Todd
did that part
Phillips,
come
the
along?
great Todd Phillips, always liked me, and I auditioned for it to play this New York guy from Long Island. And when I went to do the scene at the table read with everybody, I said I want to play him like an Armenian or a Lebanese guy because that's who would own a wedding chapel in Vegas, and he just loved it. And when I swore in Arabic, they fell out at the reading, and I knew that was the character.
That
Loved it,
was
yeah,
it.
yeah.
And you did all three, right?
I
Were you in
did
all
one and
three?
two. Three was,
1 and 2.
but there was talk of me coming to do. I think I might have been offered something, a DJ or something. I can't remember, and I just I didn't do it because I was doing another movie. I think I was doing Ride Along. I can't remember, but I was doing.
How were the cast of Hangover? How was that? Was that
Well,
very much like a
I had known Bradley
fraternity?
Cooper way before he was famous. He was like my good friend. So, I'd known Bradley. I remember when Bradley called me because he got Wedding Crashers. It was like a big deal. So,
Mm.
I knew Zach Galifianakis way before anyone knew Zach. In fact, Todd called me about Zach and another actor. And I said, Zach, dude, he's the funniest human being on the planet. I'm not saying Todd didn't cast Zach for that reason, because Todd doesn't listen. Todd knows the difference. But I remember he asked me about somebody, and we had a conversation. But you know, none of those guys were known. This is a small movie. Todd Phillips, when he did The Hangover, said to the studio, "Let me do." He wanted to do. So Todd wanted to do old school too, and
Right.
nobody said yes. None of the actors. Everybody
Hmm.
wanted too much money.
Interesting. That was quite a
Everybody
commercial,
was too
big movie.
famous. Everybody wanted more money. And Todd was like, really? Okay, I'm going to write The Hangover. And I'm going to use a bunch of unknown actors. And I'm going to take $1. I'm going to make $1. Just give me the back end. That's what he told the studio. Because I remember I made $2,000 or something for that scene. And then I said, how much you making for this? And he goes, you're making more than I do. I go, what? And he goes, I'm banking on this, I'm banking on myself. And I remember in my mind, I went, he's crazy. He's crazy. Yeah, he's crazy. Yeah. Number one.
How much do you make? How much do you make
He
off
probably
that
made
picture?
over $200 million. He owned it. He was one of 4
Yeah.
owners.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, Todd,
That was a
Todd's a
good gamble.
genius.
Yeah.
He's a genius.
Would you say he's your favorite director you've
Oh
worked
yeah.
with?
I think Todd Phillips is one of the great directors of all time. The Joker's a
Mm.
masterpiece. I mean, he's nothing that dude does is an accident. I wrote a script that he critiqued, that he read and gave me notes on. Oh my God. I was like, oh, this is why you're Todd Phillips. His success, he wrote and he did a page one rewrite on Bad Santa. His name isn't on it. A page one rewrite. That's his movie that he rewrote and directed.
Wow.
he
Wow.
doesn't miss. I mean, he's
Unbelievable.
yeah.
Besides Todd, who are the most impressive talents you've worked with? I mean, who still sticks out as that was a great experience, or I'm so glad I got to have that moment with this
I mean, I
person,
got to
or
do a reading with Tom Cruise. That was fun. But my
how
heroes have
was
never
Tom
been
with you?
actors necessarily. You know,
How was Tom? I mean, he's so professional.
he's the
He's
nicest.
so
For me, he
polite.
was the nicest person I've ever met.
Yeah, I have to say the same.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what his I don't know what his demons are. He seems like he's alone. He seems like he's
Mm.
alone. He seems like he has no relationship with his daughter. And I don't see him with his kids. I don't know. I don't know. Some people, some people, they just seem to isolate. You know, they you pay a price. It's like selling your soul in a way. Like he seems to be a very lonely
Yeah.
man. He's on the
Yeah.
set of he's got his airplanes and he's on the set of his movies. He's probably a lot like he's probably a lot like a I don't know a King Lear or something. You know, he's just a king. He's a guy. I wonder how I wonder what he feels when his daughter. You know, I had a conversation for an hour about our kids. Our kids are the same age, and he and I talked about our children, and you know, and I think he loved that child. And she's 16 now, and he has no relationship with her. And I don't know. I don't know, man. That's not. You can keep all your fame. Oh, by the way, fame means nothing. Fame isn't real. Just so you know, and you know this. You know this. You've been famous. You're famous. You know, but fame is not real. It's just a lot of
No.
attention. There's a lot of attention from.
And mostly negative
Yeah, yeah.
attention for the
Oh
most
fuck.
part. And especially now with social media and everybody having a comment, everyone's got an opinion. Talking of negative press, we have to talk about
Mm.
it. Tell us what happened with all the drama and the scandal and that pivotal
Not a
moment in your
scandal.
life
It's
that
not a
changed your
scandal at
life.
all. What
Not a
you know,
scandal, but
with my friend, I was doing a show with my friend Crystalia, and I got me too'd by some woman who said 23 years ago that I assaulted her, and you know, and I don't say their names because so for me, it was like the one thing I had going for me, and make no mistake, cancel culture comes for everything. You lose everything. You lose it all. Don't tell me you don't lose it all. And there's no such thing as due process. Some journalist writes something, and there's a lot of pressure on journalists to write things so that they can get clicks, and that's all. It takes one person. And in this business, the accuser gets a story, you get a statement, and your life's over. You will not be able to. You have to figure out a way to put the pieces back together. And good luck. It's very serious. But the one thing, you know, if you are innocent, if you know who you are, you stick to that and you tell the truth, and you just keep moving. And there are people in the world who dislike you for a lot of reasons and want to destroy you. And in my opinion, a lot of them, there's there's no there's no value in revenge. There's only value in allowing whatever happens to you in life. And all of us go through some kind of a flood. Whatever happens to you, you align yourself with the highest truth you know, and or you don't know, and you let it. You come out of it a better person. And no matter what happens to you as well, um, you learn that you have to embrace the idea that that I'm gonna orchestrate my life so that I wouldn't have changed this if I could.
hmm. Well,
All that matters
that's
is what you
extremely
learn,
admirable of
what
you.
you learn from something, and does it make you better? And that's the difference between being tough and saying you're tough. You know, and it
Mm.
requires really weird stuff like forgiveness and not allowing things to make you bitter and angry.
Which, by the way, it's a grieving process. I mean, you were on top of the world. This came completely out of nowhere, out of
Sure.
left field. All of us who've known you forever were calling you. I was frantically calling you, like, "What is this BS? This is the most anyone that knows you knows it's BS."
Well, that's the other thing I
And
had going for me. See, what I also had going for me is how many people came, women and stuff came to my defense privately. I have it all on my phone, like a lot,
yeah,
you know. And so, um, look,
I called you. I remember calling you going, what a load. This is such an opportunist moment. And what annoys me, and I can't stand this cancel culture. And there you go, I've said it. But I find it so irresponsible and that anybody can just say anything one time and the whole person's life is ruined.
this
And
is
it's not just that person, it's
that's the world.
their spouse, their children. I mean, this has major, effects that last for a long
That's the world we
time.
live in.
I mean,
That's called
it's
fourth wave
disgusting.
feminism. That's the world we live in.
And by the way, it minimizes the really serious Me Too
Of course.
crimes and issues,
Well,
right? So you've got these frivolous opportunists that are living in, whatever their motive is to do this, to whether it's to hurt you, hurt others, get attention, they need to feel significant for a moment, they need to make a little bit of money, whatever the reasons are. It's just shocking to me how the media make you guilty and you have to prove your
it's a story.
innocence. And that's what I find
It
disgusting.
comes with fame. It's a story, and
No, but that's coming with fame, and that's a whole new level. This is a whole new
this is
level
social
of
media.
outrageousness.
But
Yeah.
see, but as long as corporations go along with the idea that the minute you are accused of anything, everything dries up. Just as long as we live in a world where somebody can say anything, it can be anything. Just remember, anybody,
Yeah.
you're all next. You're next. And the
Yeah.
only
Yeah.
arbiter of whether you're next or not is who's in power and what side you align with. That's it.
Mhm.
And this country wasn't founded on those principles. And I think
So
it
so for you to turn around and be like, "This is
doesn't
nonsense. This
matter.
is a
No,
pack
no,
of
it doesn't
lies,"
matter.
nobody
No,
listens to
none of
that
it
part.
matters. Anybody
So
who can tell you, look, I'm not unique. Anybody in who's been in a position of fame or whatever can tell you that the press is not your friend no matter what. And
but the press have never been your friends, but this is now slander. This is a whole other
nothing you can
level of your life is
nothing you can
ruined.
do. You just move forward and you make your life. You become a better person for it. But look, this is like there are stray bullets in life.
Mhm.
And what isn't helpful is saying, why me or any of that bullshit. Why you? You're human. Why you? Because you live in this world. Why you? Because it's supposed to happen. Because a flood comes for all of us in one way or another. If you're lucky. Because you'll learn things about yourself and about life, um, and maybe even about God that you never thought existed. So
What would you say was the biggest learning curve for you through that whole awful time in your life? Because
looking up
in
at
the
the
middle of
sky,
it,
looking up at the sky because I had no one else. I had no answers. I think when you're in, I think as a human being, when you're thrown in the middle of the ocean and you don't have a paddle and you have no idea how to navigate these waves, and all you can do is look. There's something to being to not being religious and being forced to your knees. You probably haven't lived until you looked up. And what's really interesting is you
mm,
might find some answers, and you don't even know how to explain it. But
I think that's the name of your next book. You haven't lived till you've looked
yeah,
up.
maybe so. Maybe
Take
so.
it. Take
I
it.
like that you said next book.
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
Well, you've recently had another beautiful new baby,
yep,
Cody, married the lovely
yep,
Dani, who I
yep,
adore, who's so good for
yep.
you. She takes none of your crap. What's next for Bryan Callen?
I'm
Obviously,
getting a massage.
tell
I'm
me
late to
about
my
what you're up
I'm late
to.
to my massage. My wife bought me a massage, and I'm 15 minutes late. But this has been awesome. That's what's next for me.
Oh, you're trying to say you
And
gotta
yeah, and
go.
you and I have
All
dinner
right.
tonight.
We have dinner tonight, so I will
Yeah,
see you then. All right. I'm taking the hint that it's time to wrap it up. And massage is definitely something we don't run over for. Bri, I love you. We'll do part two another
I love it.
time. And you're my buddy. I
Thanks,
love you.
Karen.
Thank
Appreciate it.
you.
This is fun.
Thanks everybody for listening to the Behr Essentials with me, Dani Behr, and my very special guest and dear friend, Bryan Callen. Thanks for listening.